Hello, welcome back. Today I wanted to address the events surrounding me telling my family that I was diagnosed with Aspergers, and what their reactions were and what's happened since. I suppose, a spoiler alert, nothing much, to be honest with you. I obviously had to tell my parents that I'd been diagnosed, and I've got one sister. Both my parents are still alive, and I've got a daughter and two stepchildren. So they were mainly the people that I wanted to tell. During my diagnosis period, I thought it would be prudent not to tell anyone really. I told my partner had to be involved in the diagnosis, in absence of my parents having any involvement in it, as I explained in one of the earlier videos. So my partner knew about it, but once I'd got the diagnosis, I knew the hardest thing would be to tell my parents, but I kind of already knew how that was going to go. That was going to go along the lines of, I tell them that I've been tested and diagnosed for Aspergers, and they would say, oh, and then we probably wouldn't talk about it again. And that's pretty much what happened. Because as I've alluded to before, people's understandings of autism and Asperger's wasn't a thing until the 90s anyway, and and I was in my mid-20s by then. My parents don't know anything about autism. They probably never heard of Asperger's. They probably heard of autism, but they've got the stereotypical views on what that is, and of course they don't see that in me. They don't see me flapping my arms around, having major meltdowns, having learning difficulties when I was younger, having like really pronounced social interaction issues, although I do have those, but not as severe as someone at the opposite end of the spectrum to me would have. So because they don't see those things, I don't know. I don't even know if it's sunk in. I mean, it shouldn't change anything, because at the end of the day, you're still the same person. You've gone your whole life, you've grown up with your idiosyncrasies and your weird behaviours, and that's part of me. They've always seen that as part of me. Having some comprehension and understanding of why, does that change anything to them? Not really. It doesn't change anything, does it? I mean, the same, I told my daughter about it, and she's a medical professional, so she has a more analytical mind and understanding of what it is. But once again, I don't think I didn't really get any reaction from her. I was surprised. I haven't had a lot of questions, or haven't had any really serious chats about it, because at the end of the day, I'm her dad, and she loves me for all my quirks, and she knows no different either, so it doesn't affect her either. Same with my sister. I got a sneaking suspicion my sister's on the spectrum anyway. She seemed to have had a similar path to me, with similar experiences when she was younger, very alike in lots of the other traits, but she's got no interest in taking that any further. You know, she's of the opinion as well that, you know, what would it change? Why do I need to know? What difference would it make? I think the only real person it made a difference to was me. And ultimately, if you're going to get a diagnosis, you're doing it for yourself. People aren't going to change how they interact or treat you or behave with you really once you tell them you've had a positive diagnosis for Asperger's, because it doesn't change anything. The only thing it changes going forward is future relationships and interactions with people, strangers, whoever. That's something that you can make people aware of as you see fit, and you know, those people are more likely to be making adjustments for you, knowing areas that people with Asperger's struggle in, you know, if they know a little bit about it, and they will kind of give it more credence, I suppose. I mean, as I said, my parents kind of didn't really like it, didn't mean anything to them, and I think to a lot of people it doesn't mean anything. It only really means something to me, but because I have to interact with everybody else and live in the same space, my behaviours are different, and sometimes that's very noticeable, and I have found it comforting to be able to have something to go back to and say to them, you know, I have Asperger's and I struggle with this, and I'd rather not do it, because it's never an option I had when I was younger. I never had that option to say, well, I'd politely like to step back from this situation because it's going to cause me a great deal of turmoil. You know, it's going to upset me. It's not going to be something I enjoy. Can I not do it? Back in the day when I was a kid, you didn't have a choice. You did it. You did what you were told. So, yeah, telling the family was a bit of a non-event, to be honest with you. Possibly I'd built that up into something it wasn't. To me, it was like, in my world, it's the biggest revelation I'll ever have in my life, ever. I mean, I don't even think my parents telling me that I was adopted could top that. Not that I am adopted, but you know what I mean. I don't think there's any news I could receive about myself that was bigger than being told I had autism, and that rocked my world. You know, that completely blew my brain. Everything started to make sense, and it was very enlightening, and I wanted to share that sense of relief and understanding with people and tell them, you know, I wanted to get across how that made me feel. But you know, the Asperger's inhibits me doing that anyway, to a certain degree, and I've yet to really have a conversation with somebody where they're genuinely interested in my story, because you know, it's something that, yeah, it was such a big thing in my life, such a big thing, that, yeah, I even carry that around with me now. You know, it's kind of like I got my diagnosis and, yeah, nothing did change really. It all changed in my head, I suppose. Changed the way I perceive myself and my world around me now. I make adjustments to make my life easier, and going forward it will make my life easier, knowing, definitely 100% knowing, it's going to make my life better. It's not going to be a perfect life, of course, because I'm still going to have those struggles, but I can work around some of them a bit easier now. Something I found out the other day, which was a bit of a side note, they said 1% of people in the UK are on the autism spectrum. So if you've got, let's say, a current population of about 7 million people, then 700,000 are on the autism spectrum. And what the article was saying was, out of those 700,000 people, only 16% managed to keep down full-time jobs. So if you do the maths, I think that works out, give or take, like 1 in 1,000. No, 1,000 people, sorry, in the country who've got autism keep down a full-time job. And that made me feel a little bit better about myself, knowing that that's quite an achievement in my world. You know, having autism and Aspergers and keeping down full-time jobs. I've only been unemployed for 4 weeks in my whole working life since I was 16. And I've had 2 mortgages. You know, I've got a daughter. I've had some major milestones. For someone with Aspergers, that's quite a massive achievement. And that made me feel quite, you know, a kind of reality check that I've come that far. Because neurotypical people wouldn't see that as an achievement at all. They'd think that is like the norm, that's the base level. But for someone like me, I've done really well to get on and do that. And yeah, going forward, I think it's going to be better. I think it's going to be better than before. So yeah, I hope you found some interest in this video, and see you next time.